you a member of the Turtle Club?
Well, not exactly.
Not exactly, but am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am Paul Caputo, sportslogos.net minor league baseball correspondent, broadcasting live, as always, from the Helmet Sunday Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today's episode is unique for me because this is the first time that I have talked about a defunct team name, a defunct brand, but it's been a fan favorite for a long time. It was around for a quarter century, and I'm very happy right now to be joined by the creator of the logo for the Beloit Snappers. Chris Kretz, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for including me.
Absolutely. Well, this is a logo that I've liked for a long time. You know, you'll hear over the course of this podcast, you know, I'll talk to Bobby Coon, who was the media guy for the Snappers when I got to go to my first Snappers game. I mean, this team has had a special place in my heart for a while, and I really enjoy this logo that you created for them. Now, most people who follow minor league baseball know now that the Snappers logo was replaced in a very long and drawn out process, longer than usual, I think, because of COVID and because of the way, and then the way Major League Baseball took over minor league baseball. There were a lot of factors that led to this being a sort of long drawn out process, but it was replaced. They're now the Beloit Sky Carp. We're not talking about the Sky Carp today. We are talking about the Beloit Snappers. So first of all, Chris, this logo that you created, it was created in a time before focus groups, before huge firms that were creating minor league baseball logos. Can you tell me about how you got involved in creating the Snappers logo and sort of what that process was like?
At the time, my cousin was the general manager of the Beloit Brewers. And back then, everyone just kind of took the parent name of the major league affiliate. So, but this was early mid 90s, and teams just started to think we can have our own identity and make money off of souvenirs, things like that. So my cousin decided to pitch to the team and everyone involved, we need a name change. And he was basically the focus group and a couple other people. And he called me knowing, I'm an artist. I was living in Milwaukee at the time. And he said, if I come up with some ideas, can you at least sketch some ideas out, send them to me so I have something to show? So there was like Beloit Blues, Beloit Blaze, and some different things. And then finally one day he called me up. He goes, I got it. Snappers. Like, snappers? He said, yeah, snapping turtles. We have, these historic turtle mounds and Turtle Creek and, on and on and on. I'm like, that's brilliant.
So there was no highly publicized name the team contest with 15,000 entries and
run out for 18 months. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And we drew the top 10, and now the fans are going to vote on those, and then we're going to vote on 3 more. It was your cousin came up with some name ideas, and then one day inspiration hit him, and he said, here's what it's going to be.
He said, we got to go with it. And he pitched to the board, and they were a little tentative. And but like many people, they have to see something also with the name, And so he said, come up with a sketch. So knowing he was a catcher in high school and college, the first sketch was Snappy was a catcher. I was just kind of thinking the hard shell chest and that's why the cap is on backwards, and he was, just standing on home plate holding a ball. And the catcher never gets any love. It's always, someone throwing or swinging a bat, but the catcher doesn't get any love. So let's give the catcher some love. And they saw it, and they liked it, and they said, let's, do some more designs. And they had a couple other local artists working on it. And so like 2 or 3 of us, they just said, we'll pick the best one, and that's who we'll pay.
So you said that's who will pay. In the article that I wrote about this team in 2014, Bobby mistakenly said, oh, they didn't even pay the designer who created this. And he didn't know who you were, right? Like in that article. And so you, thankfully, you found that article and you said, hey, I'm the designer. And they actually did pay me. You said not much, but they did pay me.
Each artist $150 just to work on it, come up with ideas. And then I think I was paid $500. after that. So a total of $650.
And some merch, I hope.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got a free dozen caps.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. All right.
And after that, I got a lot of merch, and then I got paid nice during the redesign in '97. So,
okay. That by the way, $650 over the 25 years that logo was in existence averages out to, it's cost the team $26 per year to have this logo that you created. You mentioned the redesign. There were some tweaks to the logo. You said, what year was that? Did you say?
97.
Okay. So what were the tweaks to the logo in 97?
They loved Snappy. They basically wanted to redo the lettering and the primary logo itself. And back then I was still doing everything by hand, pen and ink. I did the original Snappy logo in pen and ink with color separations on various sheets using Ruby Lith.
Wow.
Dating myself right there.
You are speaking a language that I think a small percentage of listeners to this podcast are gonna understand. I mean,
I just narrowcasted myself with that one.
I mean, just talking about separations is something, right? So, do you still have the original plates from those separations? Like, do you still have any of the original?
I do not, because I did them and I sent them into to Beloit. And they sent them into licensing, and they actually created the computerized vector logo from that, scanning and tracing and stuff. But I never saw them back.
I was going to ask you who created the actual vector files for it. So did it, when they created the vector files, when they created the computerized artwork, did it change at all? Was there anything you noticed where you're like, hey, that?
Nothing. And it was great. I was kind of worried that something would be smoothed over or missed, but no, it was perfect.
All right. So are there any like Easter eggs? Are there any hidden little details in the logo that folks should know about?
Yes. At the time, we just went through baseball strike, I believe, or we're going through the strike of 93, 94.
Yeah. 94 was the year we missed the World Series, and the Montreal Expos World Series year was circumvented in 1994.
Yes, that's right. And so baseball's in a little bit of a turmoil, and Pete Rose gambling was just blowing up still. And so I was always a Pete Rose fan. Maybe not personally, I don't know him personally, but I mean, just being a fan of baseball, how do you have one of the best hitters ever not in the Hall? So then I went back to Shoeless Joe, also one of the best players ever not in the Hall, and both for gambling and the hypocrisy of all the money and drugs and things like that. I'm like, these two guys didn't do anything.
There's a book called The Baseball in the Garden of Eden. I think I have that right. I hope I have that right. Baseball in the Garden of Eden, that basically details how like this whole, I mean, most baseball fans know the Abner Doubleday story is complete, fabrication. That's just entirely apocryphal. But that one of the reasons baseball is so like super hyper scared of gambling is because it was essentially founded by people who wanted something to gamble on, right? Like it was the reason baseball exists is gambling. And so it's so funny that, like Shoeless Joe and Pete Rose. I mean, I'm a huge believer that the Hall of Fame is a museum. It should tell the story, put them in the Hall of Fame, tell the story. They gambled on baseball. They got banned from baseball, make it part of their Hall of Fame story. Anyway, that I got derailed. I'm very curious to hear about how Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe factor into Snappy the Turtle.
So he's not wearing shoes.
That's an homage to, that's not just because he's a turtle. That's an homage to Shoeless Joe.
They wanted to see a sketch with shoes on. I said, no, he's not wearing shoes.
This is amazing. I have loved this logo for so long, and I'm just learning now that he doesn't have shoes because it's your homage to Shoeless Joe.
Yeah. And his batting stance is Pete Rose's. The crouch down, even though it should be flipped. Pete Rose's left-handed stance was real crouched in, but made him a righty. But yeah, so it's Pete Rose's stance, and no shoes for Shoeless Joe.
I love that so much. I have to honestly, I love that so much. I can't believe that it's taken me until having this face-to-face conversation with you. I mean, because you and I have talked or we've communicated a bunch over, Twitter message and email and whatnot. Yeah. But, to actually sit down and talk to you, face to face, such as it is on Zoom, and learn that detail. I'm blown away right now. So I love it. The other thing that I was going to ask you about was Snappy's his facial expression, the grimace, which
Grimace.
Looks a lot like grimaces you see in logos now. I mean, you see that sort of like the corner of the mouth is open but the front of the mouth is closed. So that facial expression, is that just an invention from your mind?
It's but the only thing I really researched was snapping turtles. I didn't, you couldn't Google logos at the time. So I just, had books, was looking up, snapping turtles, just trying to find certain traits. And the main thing was just, the pointy snout. And, when I think of a turtle, their head comes out, stretches out. So I kind of wanted the head big and make it look like that. And then the grimace just kind of came through sketches. That and I worked a lot on the grimace and even more on the eyebrows.
The eyebrows, okay. I like the sort of looking at the big eyes and I'm looking at the logo obviously right now. You can tell by my hand gestures here that I'm looking at the logo right now. So yeah, I love the eyebrows. You say you researched snapping turtles. What did you learn about snapping turtles?
But everything I knew already. Just growing up in northern Wisconsin, they're just mean. Don't go near them.
All right.
just mainly just trying to get certain like the claw feet and the pointy nose was mainly what I was going for. So
sure. You referenced, when your cousin came up with the team name, you referenced that there was a certain amount of like history in the area with like the turtle mounds. And, did you research any of like the importance of turtles to Beloit specifically?
I did not. He did, which is why he kind of came up with Snappers and a couple of the other names too. Just he really got into the history of the area. And once he, if the nickname were Turtles, it probably wouldn't have been as great. But I mean, as soon as he thought of Snappers, it's just like, boom,
Right.
So he couldn't turn away.
No, it's definitely a good name. So obviously, I mean, the only constant in minor league baseball branding is change, right? And so,
Yes.
it was, I don't know, I guess with most minor league baseball logos, it's sort of a matter of time when a team decides to change a name or change a logo. That being said, this logo lasted for 25 years, which especially in a smaller town, in a sort of community baseball team that played in a stadium that was, not this glorified baseball experience by any stretch, right? This logo lasted for 25 years, which is incredible staying power for a logo, especially one that was created in sort of the process that you described of just sort of like came up with a name, did a sketch, and then like, put paper to pencil and came up with it, rather than, everything we go now, like we're talking about the focus groups and the variations and the 15 different versions that, all these various, permutations of the logo. So I understand you have a personal connection to this and you're the artist. So I'm probably asking a loaded question here, but what do you attribute the staying power of this logo to?
Just the originality of it as a whole. The logo and name is just, it's not snapping turtles, it's just, snappers. And, kind of like what's another good, like Lansing lug nuts when they came out. That was just, what? Lug nuts. And so it was just, I don't know. It's just everyone I know still says it's one of their, favorite hats, favorite logos. They just love it. And it just, I don't know, got lucky, I guess.
He's speaking of getting lucky. Oh gosh, that's probably poorly phrased, right? Phrasing, right? But speaking of getting lucky with the color palette here, they ended up being an Oakland A's affiliate after, they were a Brewers affiliate, obviously for many years, but then they ended up being an A's affiliate and they were green. They were already green. So it's like, hey, we've done that work. So that was sort of a stroke of luck.
Yeah, that was, when at the time they were, the Brewers affiliate. So they were at that time the Brewers colors with the addition of the lime green. Brewers had that MB weird like motor BAME.
Yes. Yeah, they had that MB, that sort of short-lived MB logo. The Brewers did.
This the forest and navy and gold. So we just added the lime green and it worked great. So
Well, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
But then they went to the Twins and didn't work. But yeah, I mean, once they went under the A's, yeah, like you said, green, it just worked.
So speaking of the colors, though, when you count the colors up, you've got the dark blue, the yellow, and then 2 different greens. And so you've reached the maximum there. Those are the 4 colors. I mean, they tell you not to go more than 4 colors in a logo with embroidery and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I can assume then that's why the bat that he's holding is yellow.
Yes.
And so I've always enjoyed that, because in a way, right, like a snapping turtle, they're not big, right? They're little guys. And so this idea that he's holding a bat that looks like, in some ways, it could be like a plastic wiffle bat, right? Like one of those yellow wiffle bats. Yeah, they're little guys, right? So maybe that's all he can hold is a little wiffle bat.
Or one of these.
Oh, there you go. Like the little mini souvenir bats. Exactly. So yeah, but it was, I know that was sort of a limitation. You couldn't add another color, right? Like especially in 1995, 4 colors was it.
4 was pushing it, and back then.
The answers that you had for, are there any Easter eggs here? I'll just, maybe I can, lightning will strike twice here. Is there anything else about the logo that I'm not asking you that you think fans of a logo-based podcast might be curious to know about the Snappers story?
His hat is on backwards as 2 things. Number one, it helps him look like a turtle with a round head. But mainly it was because the original sketch was to pay homage to catchers, because catchers never get any love in logos. And my cousin at the time, my cousin, who at the time was the general manager, was a catcher in college baseball. So that was kind of like my tribute to him also. And the funny thing is, if you remember the time, early 90s, I was 24, 25 when I did this. And Griffey Jr. would wear his hat backwards in warm-ups and stuff, and people were just aghast. What are you doing? That's not baseball.
Kids these days.
Yeah, and a lot of people on the board at the time were worried that it would send the wrong signal with his hat being on backwards and things like that. And like, no, it's got to stay on backwards. That's why he's got the B, and then it turned into the S for Snappers. But that's why always has a logo on the back of his hat.
So I was going to ask you. Well, so first of all, I'm glad that you said that about Griffey, because Griffey is the first thought that I had. I would Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe I love those connections. So I'm glad that you mentioned Griffey, because I was going to ask whether that was a specific homage to him here. But the catcher thing makes a lot of sense too. The B, the B switched from B for Brewers, I assume, to S for Snappers. Did the team consider just leaving the B for Beloit?
Once they changed it, because originally we when we're working on the logo, we had Snappy, but we didn't have a font. We didn't have lettering. Mm-hmm. So I was, just kind of faxing ideas. And then licensing said, you got to get us something now. I mean, we need to move forward. If you want this, the timeline was, because they wanted to unveil it at the end of the season. So my cousin Steve just kind of cut the lettering out of a fax and pasted it over the top and sent it in. So just go with this for now, basically. And that's how why the original logo part of the turtle is covered. And they said, fine. So that was the logo for the first few years, until they finally said, yeah, we got to redesign this. Okay. We don't like the hobo font. I think it
is hobo,
yeah.
Which is a, type nerd moment here. The hobo font does not have descenders. So like the P's and the Q's, and I mean, this one's all caps, so it doesn't matter. But like the lowercase hobo font, which has been around for like 70, 75 years, I think, does not have descenders. Nothing goes below the baseline with hobo, so it just makes it a very sort of strange font. Like I said, this one's all caps, so that doesn't matter. So that was like my Jeopardy font moment. I was going to say one other thing, because I always have these like weird logo associations. This is why people can't have normal conversations with me. But you mentioned catchers in logos. The Negro Leagues Baseball Museum unveiled when they did their 100th anniversary logo, the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues, and they unveiled a logo. The figure in that logo is based off of Biz Mackey, who was a catcher in the Negro Leagues. So that's your Snappy is in great company here with Biz Mackey, the catcher from the Negro Leagues.
Love to get there too. That's Kansas City, right?
Kansas City, and it's an amazing facility. I've been 3 times, and every time I go, they've changed up the exhibits, and I've been very lucky to meet Bob Kendrick, who is the president. A couple of times I've gotten to interview him for stories, and Kiana Sinks, of course, who is their digital marketing manager. She's just a superstar. So they're a great facility, and they're telling an amazing story. So definitely you should get there. Absolutely. Everyone listening to this podcast should get there. Not just Chris. So where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Let's see. I do have a separate Facebook page just showing some of my design work. I have not updated it in years. To be honest, I don't do much design work anymore. It just we bought an old house a few years back, and I kind of got into the whole woodworking, redoing, refinishing old things, and fixing up a house kind of stuff. And that's kind of like my new creative jam. So,
well, for the listener out on a run or in the car or at home, wherever you are, the picture I would like to paint for you here is that Chris is sitting in what we called in the pre-interview, Chris was calling it the bar, and is surrounded by Snappers paraphernalia and illustrations of other logos that he's created over the years as a freelance graphic designer. So it's a pretty sweet looking setup there with all your Snappers gear. So I'm kind of jealous of that. So anyhow, so Chris, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your morning and talking about the Snappers. Snappy the Turtle will live forever, and I know there's a lot of people out there who love the logo that you created, and it lasted for 25 years as the face of a minor league baseball team. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, crazy lasting power, and I still wear the hats. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Chris, and we'll see you online.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Paul.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm very pleased right now to be joined by my friend Bobby Coon, who was the director of media relations for the Beloit Snappers back in the day when, at least in 2014. Bobby, what were the years you were actually there?
I was there from 2013 to 2017.
Okay, so 13 to 17. You went on and you worked with the Delmarva Shorebirds after that. And you're not exactly in minor league baseball right now, except for you do a terrific podcast called Pulling Tarp. By the time this drops, this episode, you may have already hit your 100th episode of Pulling Tarp. So, from past us, congratulations to you on 100 episodes of Pulling Tarp.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Paul. Obviously, you're the first one to congratulate me. So that means a lot.
Well, I've had the honor of being a guest on there twice, and we've had fun with that. But I want to ask you, first of all, before we get into our history with the Snappers, I wanted to just ask you, what, in your opinion, as the director of media relations for 5 seasons there, what was your take on what turtles meant in snapping turtles in particular, meant to the community of Beloit?
Well, they meant a lot. Everywhere, I had to be snappy quite a bit, obviously. So everywhere we went with Snappy, he got so much attention. He was the most well-known person in Rock County in Wisconsin. And then there's just a lot of history with the city of Beloit and turtles and snapping turtles. There's a town right next to Beloit, a very small town called the Town of Turtle. There is a turtle-shaped mound on Beloit College's campus. And from, I think, the early 1900s to like the 1970s, I believe, there was a secret turtle society at Beloit College, and like every member had a turtle like lapel pin to be discreet about that. I don't know why it was a secret, but and then of course the city of Beloit's right on the Rock River, where there's a bountiful amount of snapping turtles.
This secret society thing, when I first started researching the article that I wrote for sportslogos.net about this team, first of all, you were the person I reached out to, and you supplied a lot of that history. And I was, I thought it was going to be, oh yeah, there's a bunch of snapping turtles in the Rock River. We thought it would make a cool logo. But this connection that the town had to, the secret society, I remember at the time looking on Facebook and seeing that like people would post pictures of turtles and just say Beloit, right? Like, I mean, it was like people from Beloit absolutely associate the town with turtles. And it was, it was a really interesting thing to see and to learn. And like you say, the turtle mounds that existed there that were part of, the Native American culture that existed in Wisconsin long before Westerners arrived. It was, obviously this connection to turtles runs really deep and not just in the river. Now, you said that you got to play Snappy a couple of times. One of my favorite things about your podcast, Pulling Tarp, is when you ask, folks who work for minor league baseball about, their other duties as assigned. Obviously, actually pulling tarp for rain delays is one of the big things. But, you always ask these people who have these sort of lofty sounding positions who end up having to do some not so lofty things. So actually getting to personify Snappy the Turtle out there in the community, what kind of reactions did you get from folks?
I took a lot of pictures with people. And I do really believe that being a mascot kind of helped prepare me for the pandemic, and I'll explain why.
All right.
So I always felt really stupid when I would pose for pictures in the Snappy costume, and I inside was smiling, like, and I was like, wait, I don't have to do that. And so when I took pictures, with masks on and stuff like that for my job now, I was like, oh, this is just like being in a mascot costume. I don't have to smile if I don't want to.
That's really funny. That's actually awesome. I really love that. That's a great point.
Yeah, but just the kid, every person knew who Snappy was. Like it wasn't like, oh, what mascot is that? It's everybody knew who Snappy was, and everybody had to get a picture. Everybody had to get a hug or a high five. It was crazy. He was extremely popular.
Well, I have been to 2 games in Beloit, both in the old stadium, both in Pullman Field, obviously when they were the Snappers. Haven't seen the Sky Carp in person yet, or I guess nobody has because they haven't started the season yet. But I saw that when I was at the game. Snappy was wandering around the stadium and people were taking pictures. I have a picture with Snappy, myself. And so, obviously he was a beloved mascot. And I understand from, what Quinn Studer was saying when I wrote about the Sky Carp for sportslogos.net, that Snappy's still going to be there. He's going to be sort of part of the game experience in some way. So we'll see what that actually looks like. So you mentioned the town of Turtle, and I remember when we spoke in 2014 for the article, you told me you got a speeding ticket in Turtle.
I sure did. I was actually looking back through that article, kind of just refreshing myself with it. I was like, yeah, I sure did get a speeding ticket there. I was coming back from Madison. So before I was director of media relations and marketing, the first year I was director of food and beverage. I don't know why I wasn't qualified at all. But I was coming back from Madison from taking my food licensing exam for the state of Wisconsin. And I was super pumped that I had passed because like I studied my butt off for it. Yeah. And I'm coming back to Beloit, getting ready to tell the rest of the staff, and I'm cruising, bumping my music, and all of a sudden,
yeah.
They get Matt Olson and Renato Nunez also got a speeding ticket right where I did too.
Is that right? It's a speed trap for Snappers players and employees, I guess, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess that probably didn't hit their wallets as hard though, as a minor league baseball front office personnel person.
Right. Matt Olson had a couple mil in the bank at that point as a first round draft pick, but
yeah. Well, so speaking of the team, you and I, we go way back now. I can't believe it's almost a decade now to think about this. I know, right? It was 2014. I had just started writing for sportslogos.net, and I reached out to you and I said, I'm going to be in Rockford, Illinois for work. It's like a half hour maybe to drive up to Beloit from there. I said, can I bother you? It's going to be opening day 2014. Can I bother you for press credentials? This was after your year in food services. This was your first game as the director of media relations. Mm-hmm. And you just said, yeah, sure. And so I was like, this is cool. So, the first thing that I want to sort of relay about that is the ballpark experience. Now, I'm trying to keep in mind here that it was freezing cold. I mean, it was freezing. So when I first arranged this, I was just like, opening day, minor league baseball. It's going to be hot dogs and American flags and, bands marching around. And it was 150 people, maybe like huddled in blankets. So it was a pretty sparse crowd. It was freezing cold. And when I drove up, I did not have the experience in minor league baseball then that I do now in terms of ballparks I've seen, but I was surprised to see that this was essentially, Pullman Field was barely more than like a city park, basically.
Right.
And so the origin of this logo, I feel like the origin story of this logo kind of corresponds with this style of park, right? It was not a huge design firm. It wasn't a high paid graphic designer. It was, Chris, I just spoke with Chris, mm-hmm. Essentially a freelance graphic designer who knew somebody who had a high profile position with the team. So in a lot of ways, I kind of feel like this logo, this snappy logo that lasted for a quarter century, was kind of appropriate to the ballpark experience that you had there.
Absolutely. Yeah, Pullman Field was not the most desirable place to go as far as like a visiting team standpoint came. But it is what I called home for 4 years. So yeah, we didn't set any attendance records, but yeah, I mean, I think I told you this when we did the article, 7 years ago, that Beloit, the Snappers, they never had a lot of money, right? Like they're a not-for-profit organization, and the fact that it was a general manager's cousin that designed the logo, I guess he did get paid. When I read the article, I was always told that he did not get paid. He just did it for some merchandise.
Right.
But it really does sell the fact that it was a community organization, right? It takes everybody. I mean, even when I was there, we didn't have a concessions team. We had volunteer teams to work the concession stands every game,
right?
Just because we didn't have the money. And yeah, I mean, I really do think it was just a small community team, and everybody just had to come together to make it work.
Well, okay, so you've dovetailed right into the story I was going to tell, and I think everyone who has listened to your podcast and maybe listened to this story on some other podcasts, if we're going to say it takes, if it takes a community, it takes everyone to make the ballpark go. I do have to share the story of the time that I got to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" on opening day in 2014 at a Beloit Snappers game.
Yeah.
And like I said, this has become sort of part of the lore almost of the minor league baseball Twitter community that we have out there. But so normally if I have press credentials, right, like I'll hang out in the press box for an inning, maybe an inning or two, talk with the media folks, talk with the other writers, whatever. And then I'll go out and I'll experience the game out there in the stands, usually with a helmet Sunday. On this occasion, it was so cold that I went out there for like a half inning and I was just like, to heck with this. And so I come back and watch the rest of the game. And in a lot of ways, that's how, you and I sort of got to know each other, right? Like we actually spent the rest of the game just sort of hanging out there talking. I was laughing because, and you'll have to refresh my memory on this, the auto glass sponsor, that when the foul ball went over the field, went over the stands, which it always did because the stands were small, you were supposed to play a sound over the PA for a sponsor who I know you remember.
That's another Drevdahl auto body foul ball.
And then there would be a crashing glass sound. And then I remember you turning to me and saying, I'm just playing that once an inning. I'm not playing that every time there's a foul ball. And I thought that was hilarious, right? Like, I thought that was really funny. So, and again, this is your first game in this role as the director of media relations. So then, of course, we get to roughly like mid sixth inning, maybe the bottom of the sixth inning. And it occurs to you that the audio file for Take Me Out to the Ball Game that you usually play over the PA is on the ticket sales computer, not on the media relations computer. And so you rate, and I'm going to let you take it from here if you don't mind.
Yeah, we're trying to save money somehow, I'm sure, and use the ticket computer and the PA announcing computer, for the same purpose. I don't know why, but I had just got done moving like all these files, and some of them didn't make it, obviously. I put together, my playlist or whatever for the game, and I'm going through the script and looking to make sure I have everything in place. And I'm like, oh crap, it's not Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And I think the Wi-Fi in the press box was spotty at best. And I radioed down to my buddy Bill, who I still talk to almost every day because we work for the same insurance company. And I said, hey man, Take Me Out to the Ball Game's not in the computer. Like the sound file's not in here. And he said, well, you're just gonna have to sing it. And my wife will be the first to tell you that I'm tone deaf. So I know that I'm self-aware of that. And so I was like, yeah, there's no shot I'm singing that. Yeah. And you overheard this banter between Bill and I, and you said, well, I'll sing it. And I said, really? And we had known each other for, I guess, 6 innings at that point.
Right.
And you said, yeah, of course. And so I gave you the mic, and you took it away from there, and you killed it. You really bailed me out there.
Well, it was my pleasure, and it's turned into the story of a lifetime. And knowing that we've shared this story on, other podcasts. I think you were on Ed Rivera's Dad Hat Chronicles podcast, and you told the story. And, when I was on your podcast, we told the story. I have a confession to make now that I don't think has ever been told about this story. Yeah, there's an addendum to this story that I've kept to myself, but I feel like the time has come to reveal this. There's a reason that video does not exist of me singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Oh.
I think they were playing the Burlington Bees. I have to look that up. Was it the Burlington Bees? And there was a woman who was a reporter. She was the beat writer covering the Burlington Bees. And she said, hey, do you want me to use your phone, and I'll shoot a video of you singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game, because it's kind of a cool thing. And I appreciated that offer, but I was I was trying to play it cool. I'm like, yeah, I'll sing it. That's fine. I was so terrified that I was going to forget the words to this song that I have sung thousands of times in my lifetime, that I called the lyrics up to Take Me Out to the Ball Game and had them on my phone in case I forgot how to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
I would have done the same thing.
And that's why this very nice reporter who offered to shoot video with my phone, I was just like, no, I'm hanging on to my phone, because I need a reference in case I forget the lyrics to Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Mm-hmm. So that is my deep dark confession about singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game on opening night in 2014 in Beloit.
Well, I still appreciate it. You really bailed me out there. So
it was really fun. No, it was a story of a lifetime. And then you were gone by the time I got back to Beloit. So my second time there, I got called out of the stands. I got picked out of the stands with my buddy Howard, who I'm going to actually talk to after you and I talk here. and I got to run on the field. I got to race Howard dressed up as a mattress for a between innings contest that I guess was a promotion for the Beloit Mattress Company. So
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, I mean, it's easy to it's easy as a sports fan to sort of pick on a field that's, maybe kind of dumpy or whatever, but it was the quintessential sort of minor league baseball experience for me, right? Like it was this quaint community town, this community experience, fans who, the fans who were there braved some serious temperatures to be there, right? And there was more than a couple, right? Like, I mean, there was, maybe 150, 200, but that was a lot. It was a lot for that level of minor league baseball. And so, it was an experience that I really honestly treasure. And that ballpark was, in a nostalgic way, something I really enjoyed. So that was cool. So I do want to ask you one other thing that I liked about the logo when I was there, which was the fact that the Snappers were an A's affiliate and they were sort of green and yellow, not by virtue of being an A's affiliate, but just because of turtles, I guess.
Right.
And so when we talked before, you told some funny stories about A's fans in Beloit, Wisconsin.
I'm always I always wondered how an affiliate with a parent team so far away, how that works and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the A's have never had a low A affiliate that was near them, so it's always been in the Midwest League. But it was kind of wild. There were there's A's fans everywhere. I
Right.
come to find out.
Yeah.
And people who were from Oakland or just grew up being big A's fans, they would be on the road traveling through the Midwest, and they're like, I had to stop here because you guys are an A's affiliate, and you guys have some of the best prospects coming up and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, you're a really big A's fan, huh? That's weird. And then I would go to the Qdoba in Beloit, and he was making my burrito one day, and there was an Oakland A's tattoo on his forearm, and I was like, big A's fan, huh? And he's like, yeah, and of course I'm wearing a Beloit Snappers polo.
Yeah.
And he's like, love what you guys are doing, and this player and that player, they're having a great year. And he always gave the team. So one of my buddies, Emmett Ackerman, he's been on my podcast, and he actually followed me from Beloit to Delmarva.
Okay.
He was the clubhouse manager, and they would get food from Qdoba. They would order it for the team, and he would always give them a big discount because we were an A's affiliate and all this stuff. It's wild. I was actually on vacation in Antigua, and I was wearing a Beloit Snappers t-shirt, oddly enough, and it actually had an Oakland A's logo on it. And this lady says, what do you know about the A's? And I said, well, I used to work for one of their minor league affiliates. And she goes, get out of here. She's like, I'm a huge Oakland A's fan. I'm from right outside of Oakland. And, and she's like, what players were there? And I started naming them. And she goes, oh yeah, I have his autograph. And I was like, oh, okay. Even in Antigua, there's A's fans apparently.
Big A's fans in Antigua. So speaking of players who played there, one of the things I did with my press credential was that you set up an interview with a player, and I just sort of asked, hey, who should I talk to? And I ended up interviewing obviously a minor leaguer named Boog Powell, who shares a name with, but is not the same Boog Powell who became the big time major leaguer. But that was a sort of interesting experience, because I always liked to follow those players after I interviewed them. And he ended up getting suspended for steroid use for 50 games, just a one-time offense, if I remember. And then I think he sort of topped out with the Stockton Ports. I don't think he ever made it to Oakland.
Well, actually, I was pretty sure he made it to the majors with Seattle, and then he got traded to Oakland. I think he was in with Tampa for a little bit, maybe. He did get suspended for, I believe it was Adderall, and then got suspended again for PEDs once he was in AAA or something like that. But yeah, he did make it to the majors.
You're right.
He didn't last very long though.
You are right about that, and I was mistaken. He ended up playing 59 games for he 23 for the Mariners, and then he ended up back with Oakland, and he played another 36 in 2017 and 2018. So
okay,
I guess I lost track of Boog Powell after the suspension. Didn't realize that happened. So apologies for besmirching the career of Boog Powell.
Oh yeah, you can't do that.
No, you certainly can't. So, well, Bobby, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this experience. It was obviously for me, meeting you and getting to participate in the way I did at the Snappers game, and then getting to sort of connect to that brand. Really enjoyed that. And, just really enjoy everything about the team. I've got a bunch of Snappers gear that I picked up, some when I was there at games and some that I ordered when I heard that they were changing their name. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm most active on Twitter. Me personally, I'm on there at It's R.A. Coon. That's ITSRACOON. You can also follow the Pulling Tarp podcast at Pulling Tarp Pod on Twitter. I am on Instagram as well at RACoon54. And I'm also on LinkedIn at Bobby Coon, if anybody wants to connect on there. And yeah, every Thursday, new Pulling Tarp podcast episode, wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm a huge fan of your podcast. I've been listening at the time of this recording for 96 episodes. And again, congratulations from the past on your future 100th episode. It's such a great insight into that minor league life, right? People who are minor league baseball fans will really gain a sort of like Bull Durham style appreciation for the gritty nature of what it means to actually work in minor league baseball, and the long hours and the other duties as assigned, and the getting your hands dirty and just exhausting summers of working for minor league baseball. So it's given me a great appreciation for minor league baseball as a sport, for sure. So thank you for doing that. And your podcast for all those many episodes that you've done was always there in the back of my mind when I was thinking about doing this podcast. I always thought, like, God, I would love to do a podcast someday. And here are you, here's you making it happen. So appreciate that inspiration, and, best of luck with the podcast. And I'm sure we'll talk again going forward.
Yes. Thank you, Paul. You've been the only repeat guest on the Pulling Tarp podcast. And it's hard to believe that, I gave you a media credential 7-8 years ago. And yet here we are still chatting it up. And it's fantastic. I love, Twitter and, online presence that just makes that able to happen.
I think that speaks to just what this, minor league baseball community is, right? Like it's such a genuine, supportive group of folks, and I'm glad to have found it. It's been huge for me. So again, thank you and good luck. And I can't wait to talk again. I can't wait to become the first three-peat guest on
it's
Pulling
only
Tarp.
a matter of time.
I'll give everyone else a chance. Maybe that's another 100 episodes down the road, but I'm waiting to see what the big 100th episode celebration is going to be.
Oh, me too, actually. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
All right, Bobby. Thank you. We'll talk again. Hold on, everyone. Hang on just a second. It's time for another Marvel-style post-credit sequence. I am joined now by Howard Aprill, who is a park naturalist with Milwaukee County Parks, who is an expert on all things wildlife and Wisconsin. He's my go-to guy when it comes to naturalist things. If you read my work on sportslogos.net, you saw that I quoted Howard in an article about the now Beloit sky carp. But we're not talking about the sky carp right now, as you know, because you've been listening to this episode. We are talking about the erstwhile Beloit Snappers. Howard, hello. How are you?
Hello, Paul. It's good to be here.
Welcome to the post-credit sequence here. This is, I got this trick from Stan Lee. So Stan Lee and I have the sort of same level of creative genius. I think he had a great idea, and then I stole it. So Howard, right off the bat, I'll just ask you the question. The Beloit Snappers were around for a quarter century. What made a snapping turtle a great mascot for Beloit, Wisconsin?
I got to tell you, I think having a snapping turtle as a logo is a fantastic idea because, there's a lot to really like about snapping turtles. There's a lot to like about snapping turtles. For instance, they're very common, but they're also very misunderstood. So a lot of people think that snapping turtles are inherently aggressive, that they're mean, they'll take your toe off if you give them a chance. Well, they're really misunderstood. I've seen lots of snapping turtles in the water. I've worked with snapping turtles in the water. I've rarely encountered an aggressive snapping turtle in the water. Where they tend to get aggressive is when they're outside of their natural habitat up on the land. So that being what it is, snapping turtles, they are tough. They're very long-lived. And while they might not be the fastest critter in the pond, they are very, very resilient. And there's a saying that goes that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. And I think, if you take a look at a turtle being slow and methodical, but, turtle being the hare in going back to Aesop's fables, holy cow, there's a lot that a ball player can admire about that, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work.
So you say that snapping turtles are more aggressive when they're out of their natural habitat, when they're out of the water and on land.
That's correct. That's correct. And the reason is that, snapping turtles are essentially an aquatic turtle. So they spend most of their time in the water. They really only come up on the land when the females come up to find a place to lay their eggs. So you can imagine if you get between a mama and her youngsters, mama can be grouchy and defensive. Well, it's the same way with the mama snapping turtle trying to find a place to dig a hole and lay her eggs.
Well, and as a logo for a baseball team, it's important to note that nearly all baseball stadiums and ballparks and ball fields are on land and not underwater. So
that is true. Although, I do want to say regarding the Snappers, they're in, they're in Janesville, Wisconsin, along the Rock River. And the Rock River, I can attest to, having been there personally, is filled with snapping turtles. So it was so apropos to have a stadium next to the Rock River and to have the team that's next to the Rock River take on the moniker of a critter that's in the Rock River right next to it.
Well, so the Snappers, then, I think, like you say, they were a great logo for that team. I do want to ask your naturalist opinion here, and I'm sort of springing something on you here because this is not the Beloit Snappers. I'm going to share my screen here because while we lost the Snappers as a turtle-based logo, we did gain the Pulaski River Turtles in the Appalachian League. And so I'm going to ask your opinion as a naturalist, as an expert on turtles. What is this turtle doing sliding into home plate from the wrong side?
Oh, my word.
He's sliding into home plate from the backstop.
He absolutely is. I guess my first thought is, you have to do a little bit of suspension of disbelief, having a turtle slide into home plate from the wrong direction. Well, here's my crack at it. Let's say that turtle came around third base so fast and chugging so hard.
As a turtle is wont to do.
Of course. He literally flew over home plate or slid off to the side to avoid the tag of the catcher and is now making his way back to home plate to beat the tag. So how's that for stretching?
He's a turtle playing baseball, right? So, I mean, I guess we just have to accept, suspension of disbelief is probably the way to go. But I think, he missed home plate is really the only explanation for this. And he's coming back and he's got a big smile on his face. And he's really glad that it actually kind of looks like he's giving home plate a big hug there. So
I will say this is one happy looking turtle there.
Yeah, he's a happy little turtle.
River turtle.
All right, let's get back, Howard, to the Beloit Snappers, because you and I actually have a personal history with the Beloit Snappers. I have been to Pullman Field, the now former home of the Snappers. I've been there twice. The second time was with you. You and I got to see a game at Pullman Field. And not only did we get to see a game at Pullman Field, but we got picked out of the crowd. We got picked out of a crowd of literally tens of people and got to go down onto the field and dress as, I guess they dressed us in basically mattress costumes this is a between innings event sponsored by the Beloit Mattress Company. And we got to go out onto the field and race from behind third base on the warning track to by first base on the warning track. And that was a thrill. What a moment that was.
Well, perhaps it was a thrill for you, Paul, as you won quite expeditiously.
Well, I must have had the the memory foam mattress or something. I think I must have had I had an advantage. You know, they set you up with the California King, and I had the memory foam twin or something. So
it was a thrill. It was a thrill. Actually, when you think about it, all the people that were there, and for the staff to come down and ask people to participate, and it was a ton of fun. But I think that's one of the great things about minor league baseball is that it's just so accessible. It's just so accessible to everybody. And that was just a real thrill to be able to participate in that.
Well, you and I are, both obviously fans of minor league baseball. As a Wisconsin resident, I know I was very jealous to learn that you were going to see the new Beloit ballpark, ABC Field. And that looked like a beautiful stadium. And, that was when they played 1 year, I guess, there as the Snappers still, and you got to go see opening day. So that must have been great.
Correct. And I was considering myself very lucky to be able to get an opening day. And let me just say, it is a beautiful facility. It's a wonderful addition to the community, and it's very scenically located right next to the Rock River. It's just a great addition to the community, and it's a great place to take in a game. And I look forward to going back. And I look forward to going back with you, Paul, someday. And perhaps, I don't know if we'll be in a mattress race again, but perhaps we'll see what the newly rebranded Sky Carp can come up with.
Well, I've been to 2 Snappers games, and the first time, as has been well documented, the first time I got to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." I got to lead the crowd in singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And then the second time I got to run on the field as a mattress. So, I've got a pretty good streak going at Beloit Snappers games. Howard, there's one other thing I want to talk to you about to just shore up your bona fides as a baseball expert, because this is one of my favorite Howard Aprill facts right here. You are a movie star, having co-starred alongside Tom Berenger and Charlie Sheen. Here's you, Howard Aprill, in a starring role in the movie Major League.
You are generous, Paul. You are too generous. You are correct, though, in that I actually was a paid extra in the movie Major League. And for your listeners who might not be familiar with it, Major League, it's supposed to be the Cleveland Indians. They're the hapless Cleveland Indians, and there's a whole plot in there about turning the team around. Well, they didn't film it in Cleveland. For some reason, they filmed it in Milwaukee at the old Milwaukee County Stadium. And this was the summer of 1988, and I had just graduated from high school, and I played baseball in high school on a really, really good team. Conference champs, a whole bunch of years. And although, for complete disclosure, I should say I rode the pine on a very good team for a couple of years. But they had open tryouts, so I tried out to be a ball player, to be an extra. And literally, Paul, there were 1,000 people that showed up at the tryouts at a place called Washington Park in Milwaukee. And literally, 1,000 people. I showed up at 7:30 in the morning. I didn't get a chance to take my 6 ground balls until 5 o'clock that night.
Oh my gosh.
So I figured, and there were a lot of good ball players there, let me tell you. So I knew I wasn't going to get picked, but I put in a card to be an extra. And what do you know? About a month later, they called me and they said, "Hey, we need someone that can come down to be a beer vendor." And I'm like, "Well, I can do that." So I showed up, and they sent me to wardrobe, and they got me into kind of a vendor-looking type suit, and they gave me a little thing to carry around fake plastic glasses or cups, and they said, "You go stand over there." And believe it or not, I did not wind up on the cutting room floor. You can actually see me pretty clear if you know where to look.
I'm gonna post screen grabs on both Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, Count to Baseball, and Instagram, Baseball by Design. And we're gonna get this out there. And I assume there are photos of you like on the red carpet on opening night of the movie, and the Hollywood. There's a Howard Aprill Hollywood Square. No, I think your microphone cut out.
Unfortunately, I think my invitation for that must have got lost in the mail. Although I will say this, it was really quite the thrill, because this is a footnote to a footnote to a footnote. I wasn't even expecting this, but after we filmed, they said, okay, everybody, go down to craft services and lunch is being served. And I'm like, lunch is being served. And so I go underneath the stadium, and they had a great spread. I go through line. Guess who is sitting there at a table all by his lonesome? Well, accompanied by a young lady, but guess who was sitting there?
Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. And I thought to myself, well, this is an opportunity that presents itself very often. Absolutely. So I didn't know what exactly to say, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to pass up this opportunity. So I go up to him and I say, hi, mind if I pull up a seat? Maybe I didn't know any better, but I did. And I had lunch with Charlie Sheen and his girlfriend at the time, or his friend at the time. So
his special lady friend.
Yes. And we all know that.
Oh, well, okay. All right, Howard, I've marked this as clean on Apple Podcasts. So we'll stop the story right there. Howard Aprill, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and being part of the Marvel style post-credit sequence. And I know that we'll talk again. I know that we're going to do a Timber Rattlers episode. I'm sure we're going to do like a special episode on like the Wisconsin Brats or something like that. So we're gonna get you back on the podcast, and we're gonna tell some more stories. And we didn't even get into the time when we went to a Milwaukee Brewers game, and I complained the whole time about how the roof was closed. And then as we left, I had no idea that it was pouring rain and had been for 2 hours. So thank God for that roof. But Howard, thank you very much. And I'm glad that a huge movie star like you is still friends with me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
So to take us out, Howard, this is going to be a surprise for you right here. You don't know that this is coming here. This is another thing that I'm springing on you. But for the first time in the history of this podcast, we have an original song that was submitted by a listener, and it's the theme song for Howard Aprill's appearance on this podcast. So this comes from the Fernwood Uncles Club. We're going to ask them to take us out here with a theme song they provided for you.
Howard's on a podcast, it's his dream come true. He's got lots of turtle facts to share with you. Fun with turtles.
Turtle? Not turtle?
No.
Turtle?
No?
Not turtle.
No.